Welcome to the Growth Room. Today we're exploring one of the most transformative personal development books of recent years. The Mountain is You by Brianna Wiest. In this audiobook summary, you'll discover why we often become our own biggest obstacle, how self-sabotage works, and how to transform your greatest inner challenges into a path towards self-mastery and lasting success. Have you ever felt like you were stuck in a repetitive loop? You set big goals for your career, your relationships, or your personal health, only to find yourself pulling the plug right when things start getting good. Maybe you procrastinate on an important project, pick a fight with someone who loves you, or let anxiety convince you to stay exactly where you are. It is incredibly frustrating, and it leaves most of us asking the same painful question: why do I keep doing this to myself? Brianna Wiest, a celebrated author and contemporary philosopher of human behavior, wrote this book to answer that exact question. She argues that the challenges holding us back aren't external obstacles. The economic climate, your difficult boss, or your bad luck aren't the real issues. The real obstacle is internal. The title itself, The Mountain is You, is a beautiful and profound metaphor. Historically, we look at a mountain as a massive, immovable physical challenge that we must climb. But Wiest turns this concept on its head. The mountain isn't a barrier in the outside world. It is the accumulation of your own unresolved trauma, fears, hidden habits, and limiting beliefs. When you stand in front of that mountain, you aren't fighting the world. You are fighting yourself. To understand how to climb this mountain, we first have to redefine what self-sabotage actually is. Most people think self-sabotage is a sign of weakness, low willpower, or self-hatred. We look at our destructive behaviors and think we are just deeply flawed. But psychological insights reveal something completely different. Self-sabotage is actually a primitive, albeit completely mismatched, coping mechanism. It is an unconscious reaction designed to protect us from discomfort. When you sabotage yourself, you are trying to meet a hidden emotional need, usually a need for safety, control, or validation. The behavior itself is destructive, but the intention behind it is survival. Let's break down why we resist change so intensely. The human brain is hardwired for survival, not necessarily for thriving. To your subconscious mind, anything familiar equals safe, and anything unfamiliar equals dangerous. This brings us to the concept of the comfort zone. Your comfort zone doesn't have to be comfortable. It just has to be familiar. This explains why people stay in toxic relationships, dead-end jobs, or unhealthy lifestyles. Even though these situations cause misery, they represent a predictable kind of misery. The subconscious mind tells you, hey, we know how to handle this pain. It's safe here. Stepping into a better life, even one filled with joy and success, requires stepping into the unknown. To a brain wired for survival, the unknown is a threat. This brings us to two of the most significant psychological barriers: the fear of failure and, surprisingly, the fear of success. The fear of failure is simple enough to understand. We don't want to try our best and come up short because we worry it will prove our worst insecurities right, that we aren't good enough. So, to protect our egos, we procrastinate or don't put in a full effort. That way, if we fail, we can say, well, I didn't really try anyway. It gives us a false sense of control. But what about the fear of success? Why would anyone fear achieving their dreams? The truth is, success brings a massive amount of vulnerability. Success means your life will change. It means people will look at you differently, expect more from you, and judge you on a grander scale. It means you might leave behind old friends or outgrow your current environment. Success forces you to step into a completely new identity, and shedding your old self can feel like a psychological death. Many of us subconsciously ruin our own progress because we simply aren't ready to handle the weight of who we would become if we actually won. This internal tug-of-war is deeply rooted in our emotional conditioning. From the moment you were born, your environment shapes how you perceive love, money, worth, and safety. If you grew up in a household where peace was constantly interrupted by chaos, your emotional thermostat became set to chaos. As an adult, When your life finally becomes calm and peaceful, it feels unnatural to you. You feel uneasy, waiting for the other shoe to drop. To relieve that internal tension and get back to your familiar baseline, you will unconsciously create a crisis, perhaps by overthinking a healthy relationship or creating financial stress. You sabotage the peace because you have been conditioned to believe that peace is dangerous. Understanding this conditioning is the crucial first step of what we call the self-mastery framework. This framework is a guided journey that moves you through 6 distinct phases: awareness, acceptance, healing, rebuilding, action, and consistency. Today, we are focusing on the foundation of that framework: awareness. You cannot fix a leak in your house until you find where the water is coming from. Similarly, you cannot stop sabotaging your life until you become hyper-aware of the exact patterns you use to hold yourself back. In our modern world, these patterns manifest in very specific, culturally reinforced ways. Think about social media comparison. We spend hours scrolling through curated highlights of other people's lives, which triggers a deep sense of inadequacy. Instead of using that feeling as fuel for personal growth, we use it to fuel our imposter syndrome. We tell ourselves, "Look at them, they have it all figured out. I'm just a fraud pretending to know what I'm doing." This thought pattern paralyzes us. We stop taking action because we convince ourselves we don't belong in the room. Another major modern challenge is chronic overthinking and anxiety. We mistake worrying for preparation. We believe that if we play out every worst-case scenario in our heads 1,000 times, we will somehow protect ourselves from pain. In reality, overthinking does nothing but drain your mental battery and freeze you in place. It leads directly to procrastination. You tell yourself you are just waiting for the perfect time or the perfect plan to start your business, write your paper, or go to the gym. But perfection is an illusion, and waiting for it is just a sophisticated way of hiding. Then there is people-pleasing, which is one of the most insidious forms of self-sabotage. When you spend all your time keeping everyone else happy, you ensure that you never have the time or energy to build your own life. You sacrifice your boundaries, your goals, and your authentic self just to avoid the discomfort of someone being temporarily upset with you. You become a supporting character in everyone else's story while completely neglecting your own. Whether you're a student trying to build mental resilience, an entrepreneur trying to scale a business, or someone simply trying to find confidence and productivity in daily life, this script is your roadmap. Over the next sections, we're going to dive deep into the roots of these behaviors, learn how to regulate the intense emotions that trigger them, and build an unshakable sense of self-discipline. The mountain ahead of you is steep, but it is entirely climbable. Let's start uncovering the hidden layers of your subconscious mind so you can finally get out of your own way. Now that we've shined a light on what self-sabotage actually looks like on the surface, it's time to pick up a shovel and dig down to the roots. To truly transform your life, you have to stop looking at your bad habits as random acts of self-destruction and start looking at them as clues. Every single time you get in your own way, your subconscious is trying to tell you a story about your past. Let's look at the absolute foundation of all self-sabotaging behavior: unresolved emotional needs. Every human being has a fundamental set of needs: the need for safety, connection, validation, autonomy, and respect. When these needs aren't met through healthy, conscious channels, our subconscious mind will find a way to get them through unhealthy, unconscious channels. Take a moment to consider someone who constantly struggles with procrastination. On the surface, they look lazy or undisciplined. But if you look deeper, that procrastination might be meeting a hidden need for control. Perhaps in their childhood or their current career, they feel completely powerless, forced to live up to crushing expectations. By delaying their work until the absolute last second, they're unconsciously saying, "You can control my schedule, but you can't control me. I will do this on my terms, even if it hurts me." The sabotage becomes a twisted form of reclaiming their personal power. This brings us directly to our limiting beliefs, which act as the invisible boundaries of our lives. A limiting belief is a deeply ingrained assumption you hold about yourself and how the world works. It is the ceiling that dictates exactly how much happiness, money, or love you are allowed to experience. If you carry a limiting belief that says, "Good things never last for people like me," your brain will treat that belief as an absolute truth. The human mind hates cognitive dissonance, the uncomfortable feeling of holding two conflicting realities at the same time. If your life is going incredibly well, but your core belief is that you're destined to suffer, your brain will experience immense tension. To resolve that discomfort and prove your internal belief system right, you will unconsciously manifest a problem. You might pick a fight with an incredibly supportive partner or make a reckless financial decision. Why? Because it brings you back to your familiar internal baseline. It allows you to sigh and say, "See, I knew it wouldn't last." You would rather be right and miserable than happy and confused. Where do these powerful, limiting beliefs come from? They're almost always the result of our childhood conditioning. When you are a child, your brain is like a highly absorbent sponge. You don't have the critical thinking skills to filter out the messages you receive from your parents, teachers, peers, or early environment. You take everything entirely to heart. For instance, if you grew up around a caretaker who was constantly stressed, anxious, and deeply suspicious of others, you didn't just observe that behavior. You internalized it as a survival blueprint. You learned that the world is an inherently dangerous place where people cannot be trusted. As an adult trying to build meaningful relationships or collaborative business ventures, that conditioning will act as an emergency brake. The moment someone gets close to you, or the moment a business partner offers a great opportunity, your early childhood conditioning screams, "Danger! Fall back!" You push them away, completely unaware that you are reacting to a script written for you 20 years ago. This conditioning solidifies into your negative self-image. Your self-image is the internal mental portrait you hold of who you are. The tragic reality of human nature is that we will never outperform our self-image. If you view yourself as a failure, a procrastinator, an outsider, or someone who is inherently broken, you will consistently act in alignment with that identity. Even if an incredible opportunity lands in your lap, an opportunity that could change your entire career or financial trajectory, your negative self-image will actively sabotage it. You will skip the interview, forget the deadline, or freeze up during the presentation because your brain thinks, "People like me don't succeed at this level." Underneath all of this identity drama lies a network of hidden fears. These aren't obvious fears like a fear of spiders or heights. These are existential psychological fears. Brianna Wiest highlights that one of our deepest hidden fears is the fear of exposure. We are terrified that if we truly step into the spotlight, express our authentic creativity, or speak our raw truth, the world will see us for who we really are and reject us. We are terrified of being cast out of the tribe. To avoid that devastating pain of potential rejection, we choose to reject ourselves first. We play small, hide our talents, and keep our heads down, sacrificing our true potential on the altar of safety. This brings us squarely to phase 2 of the self-mastery framework, acceptance. Once awareness reveals these deep-seated childhood programs and hidden fears, your immediate reaction might be to judge yourself. You might feel angry that you've wasted so much time being trapped by your past. But judgment only locks the pattern in place. True transformation requires radical acceptance. Acceptance means looking at your self-sabotaging habits without anger or shame. It means looking at your overthinking, your people-pleasing, or your imposter syndrome, and saying, "I see you. I understand that you are just a shield I built to protect a younger, vulnerable version of myself. Thank you for trying to keep me safe, but I don't need you to fight my battles anymore." When you accept your flaws instead of fighting them, you strip them of their unconscious power over you. Let's look at how these deep psychological roots manifest in modern challenges like overthinking and procrastination. Imagine a student preparing for a massive academic milestone, or an entrepreneur trying to launch a new product. They find themselves completely frozen, spending weeks redesigning templates, checking emails, and organizing their desks. They call it preparing, but it is actually a textbook defense mechanism. The hidden fear driving this behavior isn't just about failing the exam or the launch. The real fear is what that failure would mean about their identity. If they try their absolute hardest and fail, their negative self-image will say, "See, you really are stupid. You really are incapable." To avoid that devastating blow to their self-worth, their subconscious mind creates the perfect excuse: procrastination. If they run out of time and perform poorly, they can blame the lack of time, protecting their core ego from the pain of feeling inherently inadequate. Whether you're seeking personal development, trying to build career growth, or looking to cultivate deep mental resilience, you must realize that you cannot outrun your internal programming. You cannot build a new life using the old blueprint. To scale the mountain of your potential, you have to stop trying to change your external results and start changing your internal identity. In the next section, we are going to explore the exact engine that drives this identity shift: emotional intelligence and regulation. We will learn how to sit with the intense, uncomfortable feelings that usually drive us to sabotage ourselves, transforming those emotional triggers into fuel for your evolution. Now that we understand the deep root causes of self-sabotage, it's time to talk about the primary engine of personal transformation: emotional intelligence. Brianna Wiest emphasizes that self-sabotage is never an intellectual problem. It is always an emotional one. Think about it. You already know what you need to do. You know you need to study for that exam, finish that business proposal, go to the gym, or have that difficult conversation with your partner. You don't lack information. What you lack, in the moment of truth, is the ability to tolerate the uncomfortable emotions that come with taking action. At its core, emotional intelligence is the capacity to recognize, understand, and manage our own feelings, while also navigating the emotions of others. Unfortunately, most of us were never taught how to do this. We were taught to suppress our feelings, hide our vulnerability, or simply distract ourselves the moment things get heavy. But unexpressed emotions do not die. They are merely buried alive, and they come forth later in much uglier ways, usually in the form of self-sabotage. To break this cycle, we have to master the art of emotional regulation. This is the ability to experience a high-intensity emotion, like acute anxiety, deep rejection, or overwhelming fear, without immediately reacting to it. When you lack emotional regulation, you're at the mercy of your emotional weather. The second a wave of anxiety hits your body, your brain interprets it as an emergency. To stop the discomfort, you instinctively look for an immediate escape hatch. You open social media to scroll mindlessly for hours. You reach for comfort food, or you completely abandon your goals for the day. You trade your long-term dreams for short-term relief. Developing true self-awareness means learning to pause in that critical window between an emotional trigger and your response. This is where your power lies. When you feel that sudden, tight sensation in your chest, or that familiar racing thought pattern, emotional intelligence allows you to become an objective observer of your internal landscape. Instead of panicking and thinking, "I am dying, something is terribly wrong," you can step back and say, "I am experiencing a wave of anxiety right now. My body is feeling threatened because I'm doing something new. This is normal, and I am safe." To get to this level of mastery, we must learn to identify our specific emotional triggers. A trigger is an external event or an internal thought that sets off a massive, disproportionate emotional reaction. Triggers are not random. They're direct maps pointing straight toward your unhealed emotional wounds. For example, imagine you are an entrepreneur or a professional pitching a new idea to your team. A colleague looks at your presentation, furrows their brow, and asks a sharp, critical question. Objectively, they're just doing their job and analyzing the project. But internally, your heart rate skyrockets, your face flushes, and you instantly shut down or become highly defensive. That colleague didn't just ask a question. They accidentally pulled the pin on a grenade of unresolved childhood conditioning. Their critique triggered a deep-seated fear in you that says, "I am incompetent, and everyone is about to find out. When you don't recognize your triggers, you walk through life like a walking minefield, constantly waiting for someone to step on the wrong spot. You become defensive, hypervigilant, and prone to people-pleasing because you are terrified of encountering any situation that might cause your buried pain to surface. You start arranging your entire life around avoiding discomfort, which means you stop taking risks, stop sharing your gifts, and completely stall your personal development. This is precisely where phase 3 of our self-mastery framework comes into play: healing. Healing is not about making your uncomfortable emotions magically disappear forever. True healing means changing your relationship with those emotions. It means expanding your capacity to sit with discomfort without letting it dictate your actions. It is the transition from being emotionally reactive to being emotionally resilient. Let's look at how this applies to modern challenges like imposter syndrome and productivity. Consider a student who is incredibly capable but struggles with intense exam anxiety. Every time they sit down to study, the sheer volume of material triggers a feeling of inadequacy. Their emotional baseline is set to believe they aren't smart enough. To escape that painful feeling of inadequacy, they immediately find a distraction. They tell themselves they are too tired, or they decide to clean their room instead. Their lack of productivity isn't a time management issue. It's an emotional regulation issue. They are using procrastination to escape the negative emotions associated with studying. To heal this pattern, that student needs to practice conscious emotional check-ins. Instead of running away from the desk the moment the anxiety hits, they must learn to stay in the chair. They need to breathe through the discomfort, acknowledge the fear of failure, and continue studying while feeling anxious. This is a profound shift. You do not need to feel completely confident, peaceful, or motivated to take action. You could be terrified, uncertain, and anxious and still move forward anyway. When you master emotional intelligence, you realize that your feelings are data, not directives. Anxiety is just your body's nervous system reacting to perceived novelty or pressure. It is not a sign that you should quit. Frustration is just a sign that you care about the outcome. It is not a sign that you are incompetent. By building this high level of mental resilience, you stop treating your emotions as enemies that need to be conquered or avoided. You start treating them as valuable messengers. You learn to listen to what they're trying to teach you about your boundaries, your desires, and your past, without letting them drive the bus. In our next section, we're going to dive even deeper into phase 3 of the framework by exploring how to explicitly heal the past, release old emotional baggage, and practice the deep self-compassion required to rebuild your identity from scratch. To truly scale the mountain of your potential, you cannot carry the heavy stones of your past along for the journey. In this section, we are diving deep into the core work of phase 3, healing. Brianna Wiest beautifully notes that we are not held back by who we are, but rather by who we think we are supposed to be based on old wounds. To build a future of self-mastery, you have to actively engage in letting go of old patterns and releasing the emotional baggage that keeps you anchored to your previous mistakes. Releasing emotional baggage sounds like a wonderful, abstract concept, but what does it actually mean in practice? Think of your emotional history as a literal backpack. Every time someone broke your trust, every time you failed publicly, every time you felt inadequate or rejected as a child, an emotional stone was placed in that backpack. If you never process those events, you carry that heavy backpack into every new relationship, every new career venture, and every single day of your life. Eventually, the weight becomes so unbearable that you simply stop moving forward. You freeze. Letting go of old patterns requires you to look into that backpack and examine the stones. It means identifying the repetitive stories you tell yourself about your life. Do you find yourself saying, "Relationships always end in betrayal for me," or "I'm just someone who can never finish what they start"? These aren't objective facts. They are patterns born from past pain. Releasing them requires a conscious decision to stop letting your history dictate your destiny. You have to realize that your past was a classroom, not a life sentence. The absolute catalyst for this release is forgiveness. Now, forgiveness is one of the most misunderstood concepts in personal development. Many people resist forgiving those who hurt them because they believe it condones the bad behavior or that it means letting the other person off the hook. But true emotional intelligence teaches us that forgiveness has absolutely nothing to do with the other person. Forgiveness is a radical act of self-preservation. When you harbor resentment, anger, or bitterness towards someone from your past, you're choosing to drink poison and expecting the other person to suffer. You're keeping the trauma alive inside your own nervous system. Forgiveness means looking at a painful situation and saying, "What happened to me was unfair and wrong, but I refuse to let that event hold a mortgage over my current happiness. I am releasing my grip on this anger so that I can finally be free." Even more importantly, you must practice self-forgiveness. Many of us are trapped in a cycle of self-sabotage because we are deeply ashamed of our past failures. We look back at our younger selves and think, "How could I have been so foolish? Why did I waste so many years? Why did I ruin that amazing opportunity?" This internal shame creates a toxic self-image that says you don't deserve to be happy or successful now. To break this loop, you must cultivate radical self-compassion. You have to extend grace to the younger version of yourself. You must realize that your younger self was operating with the limited awareness, tools, and emotional maturity they had at the time. They were doing the best they could to survive their unique circumstances, even if their coping mechanisms were deeply flawed. When you forgive yourself for your past mistakes, you release the heavy anchor of shame and give yourself permission to step forward into light. Let's look at how this applies to modern challenges like confidence building, mental resilience, and relationships. Imagine someone who went through a devastating breakup or a painful business failure a few years ago. The emotional wound left them feeling completely exposed and rejected. Because they haven't processed that pain, their subconscious mind has built a protective wall around their heart or their career. Whenever they meet a wonderful new partner or a fantastic business collaborator, they instantly become anxious, distant, or overly critical. They're sabotaging the new opportunity to protect themselves from repeating the old pain. By practicing radical self-compassion and emotional processing, that individual can look at their anxiety and say, "I am feeling scared right now because my brain remembers how much it hurt when things fell apart last time. But this is a completely different situation, and I'm a stronger, wiser person now." This is how you build true mental resilience. You don't become resilient by pretending your past didn't happen. You become resilient by facing your past, integrating the lessons, and choosing to walk forward anyway. This healing work naturally opens the door to phase 4 of our self-mastery framework, rebuilding. You cannot build a beautiful new house on a cracked, compromised foundation. Healing cleans the slate and mends the cracks, preparing you to step into the next phase of your evolution. It shifts your energy away from defending yourself against old threats and channels it toward creating a fresh, authentic vision for your life. Whether you are a student striving for personal development, an entrepreneur aiming for sustainable business growth, or anyone looking to live with true confidence, remember this: the mountain ahead of you cannot be climbed using the same heavy, defensive armor you used to survive the valleys of your past. Shed the armor, release the baggage, forgive your mistakes, embrace your flaws with deep self-compassion, and prepare yourself to claim a completely new identity. In our next section, we're going to explore exactly how to step into phase 4 of the framework by intentionally crafting empowering beliefs, building unshakable self-respect, and constructing an authentic identity that aligns perfectly with your highest goals. Welcome to phase 4 of our self-mastery framework, rebuilding. Now that we have done the heavy lifting of clearing away our emotional baggage and forgiving our past, we are standing on a clean foundation. The question is no longer, why am I broken? The question now is, who do I want to become? Brianna Wiest makes it clear that your old life is over, and your new identity is yours to design. To step out of self-sabotage forever, You must actively participate in creating empowering beliefs. Remember, your brain acts like a heat-seeking missile for whatever you believe is true. If your old belief was, "I am a procrastinator who panics under pressure," your mind worked overtime to make that a reality. Rebuilding means consciously installing a new operating system. Your new beliefs must sound like, "I am entirely capable of handling discomfort. My focus expands every single day," or "I deserve to step into a life of peace and massive success." These aren't just empty, positive affirmations. They are clear, deliberate commands to your subconscious mind about how you intend to show up in the world. This transformation requires taking absolute personal responsibility for your life. This is the exact line that separates childhood from emotional maturity. As long as you blame your parents, your ex-partner, the economy, or your chaotic workplace for your lack of progress, you're giving away all your power. You are saying, "My life cannot improve until the world changes." But when you accept personal responsibility, you reclaim your crown. You say, "It might not be my fault that I was wounded, but it is entirely my responsibility to heal. I am the sole author of my reactions, my choices, and my future." This shift is incredibly liberating because if you're the one causing the problem, you're also the one who can solve it. From personal responsibility grows an unshakable sense of self-respect. Self-sabotage is ultimately a symptom of low self-respect. When you break promises to yourself, when you say you're going to wake up early, eat clean, work on your business, or study, and then you don't follow through, you send a devastating message to your own psyche. You tell yourself, "My word means nothing. I am unreliable." To build unshakable self-respect, you must start treating your commitments to yourself as sacred vows. If you say you're going to write for 30 minutes, you sit down and you write. If you say you're going to rest, you rest fully without guilt. By following through on your word, you build a deep internal trust. You start looking at yourself in the mirror and thinking, "I can count on this person. When they say they will do something, it gets done." This internal alignment is the true foundation of confidence building. Most people think confidence is something you are born with, or that it comes from external praise and validation. But genuine confidence is simply the byproduct of a strong track record with yourself. It is the natural result of knowing that you have survived hard things, honored your boundaries, and kept your promises. Let's look at how this applies to modern challenges like career growth, productivity, and personal development. Consider an entrepreneur trying to scale a new venture or a professional looking for a major promotion. They frequently face moments of profound uncertainty and intense imposter syndrome. If they are relying on their old identity, they will look at a massive project and shrink away, telling themselves they aren't ready yet. But an individual operating from a rebuilt identity approach looks at that same challenge through the lens of personal responsibility and high self-respect. They acknowledge the nervous flutter in their stomach, but their empowering beliefs kick in. They tell themselves, "I don't need to know every single step of the way right now. I just need to trust my ability to figure it out as I go." They focus heavily on daily execution, realizing that their productivity is a direct reflection of their self-respect. They don't wait for motivation to strike. They create momentum through deliberate action. This identity shift perfectly bridges the gap between Phase 4, rebuilding, and Phase 5, action. You see, action becomes incredibly natural once your identity is aligned. When you truly view yourself as a disciplined, focused, and worthy individual, you no longer have to fight a massive internal war just to sit down and do your work. You simply do it because it is an authentic reflection of who you are. You stop forcing yourself to perform and start allowing your new self-image to express itself naturally. Whether you are a student striving for academic mastery, a professional aiming for unparalleled career growth, or someone completely focused on elevating their mental resilience, know this: your potential is not limited by your current circumstances. It is limited only by the boundaries of your current identity. Break through those old boundaries. Claim your personal responsibility. Stand tall in your self-respect. and design an identity that is worthy of the future you are building. In our next and final sections, we're going to explore phase 5 and 6 of our framework, action and consistency. We will dive deep into the specific mechanics of self-mastery, exploring how to cultivate daily habits, build fierce discipline, and sustain your transformation for the rest of your life. Welcome to the final phase of our journey, phase 5 and 6 of the self-mastery framework, action and consistency. This is where your inner transformation meets the outside world. Brianna Wiest leaves us with an undeniable truth. Insights, healing, and empowering beliefs are wonderful, but they are completely meaningless without execution. To permanently conquer self-sabotage, you must transform your new identity into daily habits, fierce discipline, and sustainable long-term growth. Self-mastery is not a singular, dramatic event. It is not a trophy you win and then put on a shelf. True self-mastery is a quiet, daily practice of consistency. It is the ability to do what needs to be done when it needs to be done, whether you feel like it or not. The world glorifies sudden, overnight transformations, but real life doesn't work that way. Sustainable change is built in the boring, unglamorous moments of your daily routine. It's choosing long-term growth over short-term pleasure, day after day, week after week. To sustain this growth, you have to establish purpose-driven living. When your daily actions are tied to a deep, profound sense of purpose, discipline stops feeling like a punishment and starts feeling like freedom. Think of a student studying late into the night, or an entrepreneur pouring their soul into a startup. If they're just doing it for a grade or a quick paycheck, they will eventually burn out or sabotage themselves when the pressure mounts. But if their work is fueled by a clear purpose, a desire to solve a massive problem, support their loved ones, or fulfill their highest human potential, their mental resilience becomes unshakable. Let's recap the complete self-mastery framework that we've uncovered today. First, awareness, spotting the hidden patterns of your self-sabotage. Second, acceptance, embracing your flaws and fears without shame or judgment. Third, healing, releasing the emotional baggage and forgiving your past mistakes. Fourth, rebuilding, consciously designing your new identity and empowering beliefs. Fifth, action, stepping out of comfort zones and taking personal responsibility. Sixth, consistency, lock in your transformation through daily habits and ironclad discipline. The biggest lesson from the mountain is that your inner struggles are not meant to destroy you. They're meant to instruct you. Every single time you experience a common self-sabotaging behavior, like procrastination, chronic overthinking, imposter syndrome, or people-pleasing, it is simply a signal that there's a part of yourself that is still calling out for awareness and healing. You do not need to run away from the mountain. You just need to realize that the mountain is the pathway to your truest self. Thank you so much for listening to this complete audiobook summary. If this message resonated with you, if it gave you a new perspective on your own inner challenges, please take a moment to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below sharing the biggest lesson you're taking away today. Your engagement means the world to us and helps us reach more minds around the globe. Welcome to the Growth Room. This channel is entirely dedicated to sharing the world's most powerful books on mindset, psychology, productivity, success, emotional intelligence, and personal development. We believe that a single idea from a great book can completely alter the trajectory of your life. And our goal is to bring those ideas straight to you in a clear, practical, and highly impactful way. As we close out today's session, I want to leave you with one final, powerful motivational message. The version of you that walked into this room today does not have to be the version of you that walks out. Your past does not own you. Your fears do not define you. And your old habits do not dictate your destiny. The mountain standing in front of you might look massive, intimidating, and completely impossible to climb. But remember, that mountain is just you waiting to be mastered. Step forward today. Take personal responsibility. Keep your promises to yourself. Keep growing, keep executing, and we will see you next time inside the Growth Room.